Decision 1. I don't care about your looks. I care about your profession and your 10,000 pounds for you to marry my daughter Laura. At the end of this month, I will promise you, Lara, I can do it. Thank you, Cancer. Thank you.
Good day, sir. This is a letter from the Baron Hospital.
What's wrong with you, Adam? I gave him a sovereign.
I can draw anyone based on their souls. You were enough for me, Yui.
Unless one is wealthy, there's no use in being a charming fellow. Romance is the privilege of the rich, not the profession of the unemployed. The poor should be practical and precise. It is better to have a permanent income than to be fascinating. These are the great roots of modern light which Yue Erskine never realized.
Poor Yui. Intellectually, we must admit he was not of much importance, and never said a brilliant or an evil, ill-natured thing in his life. But then, he was wonderfully good-looking with his crisp brown hair, his clear-cut profile, and his gray eyes. He was as popular with men as he was with women, and he had every accomplishment except that of making money. His father had bequeathed him his cavalry sword and his A History of the Peninsular War in 15 volumes. Yui hung the first over his looking glass, put the second on a shelf between Ruth's Guide and Bailey's magazine, and lived on 200 a year that an old aunt allowed him. He had tried everything. He has gone on the stock change for 6 months. But what does a butterfly to do among balls and beers? He had been a tea merchant for a little longer, but had soon tired of Picoy and Socho. Then he had tried selling dry sherry that did not answer. The sherry was a little too dry. Ultimately, he became nothing, a delightful, intellectual young man with a perfect profile and no profession. To make the matter worse, he was in love. The girl he loved was Laura Merton, the daughter of the retired colonel who had lost his temper and his digestion in India, and had never been found either of them again. Laura adored him, and he was ready to kiss her shoestrings. They were the handsomest couple in London and had not a penny piece between them. The colonel was very fond of Yui, but would not hear of any engagement. Come to me, my boy, when you have got 10,000 pounds of your own, and we will see about it, he used to say, and Dewey looked very glum on those days and had to go to Laura for consolation. One morning, as he was on his way to Holland Park, where the Mertons live, he dropped in to see a great friend of his, Alan Trevor. Trevor was a painter. Indeed, few people escape that nowadays, but he was also an artist, and an artists are rather rare. Personally, he was a strange, rough fellow with a freckled face and red rag beard. However, when he took up the brush, he was a real master, and his pictures were eagerly sought after. He had been very much attracted by Yui at first, it must be acknowledged, entirely on account of his personal charm. The only people a painter should know, he used to say, are people who are built and beautiful, people who are an artistic pleasure to look at and an intellectual repose to talk to. Men who are dandies and women who are darlings rule the world. At least they should do so. However, after he got to know Yui better, he liked him quite as much for his bright, buoyant spirits and his generous, reckless nature, and had given him the permanent entry to his studio. When Yui came in, he found Trevor putting the finishing touches to a wonderful life-size picture of a beggar man. The beggar himself was standing on a raised platform in a corner of the studio. He was a wizened old man with a face like wrinkled parchment, and most piteous expression over his shoulder was flung a coarse brown cloak, all tears and tatters. His thick boots were patched and cobbled, and with one hand he leant on a raw stick. while with the other hand he held out his battered hat for alms. What an amazing model, whispered Dewey as he shook hands with his friend. An amazing model? Shouted Trevor at the top of his voice. I should think so. Such beggar as ye are not to be met with every day. A Trubal Moshe. A living Velasquez. My stars! What an etching Rembrandt would have made of him. Poor old chap, said Dewey. How miserable he looks. But I suppose to you painters, his face is his portrait. Certainly, replied Trevor. You don't want a beggar to look happy, do you? How much does a model get for sitting? Asked Dewey as he found himself a comfortable seat on a divan. A shilling an hour. And how much do you get for your picture, Alan? Oh, for this, I get 2,000 pounds. Guinness, painters, poets, and physicians always gets Guinness. Well, I think the model should have a percentage, cried Dewey, laughing. They work hard as you do. Nonsense, nonsense. Why look at the trouble of laying on the paint alone and standing all day long at one's easel? It's all very well, Dewey, for you to talk, but I assure you that there are moments when art almost attains to the dignity of manual labor. But you mustn't chatter. I'm very busy. Smoke a cigarette and keep quiet. After some time, the servant came in and told Trevor that the frame maker wanted to speak to him. Don't run away, Yui, he said as he went out. I will be back in a moment. The old beggarman took advantage of Trevor's absence to rest for a moment on a wooden bench that was behind him. He looked so forlorn and wretched that Huey could not help pitying him and felt in his pocket to see what money he had. All he could find was a sovereign and some coppers. Poor old fellow, he thought to himself. He wants it more than I do, but he seems no handsomes for a fortnight. And he walked across the studio and slipped the sovereign into the beggar's hand. The old man started, and faint smile flitted across his withered lips. Thank you, sir, he said. Thank you. Then Trevor arrived, and Dewey took his leave, blushing a little at what he had done. He spent the day with Laura, got a charming scolding for his extravagance, and had to walk home. That night, he strolled into the Powlett Club about 11 o'clock and found Trevor sitting by himself in the smoking room drinking hock and seltzer. Well, Alan, did you get the feature finished all right? He said as he lit his cigarette. Finished and framed, my boy, answered Trevor. And by the by, you have made a conquest. That old model you saw is a quite devoted to you. I had to tell him all about you. Who you are, where you live, what your income is, what prospects you have. My dear Alan, cried Dewey. I shall probably find him waiting for me when I go home. But of course, you're only joking. Poor old wretch. I wish I could do something for him. I think it is dreadful for that anyone should be so miserable. I have got heaps of old clothes at home. Do you think he would care for him, any of them? Why, his rags were falling to bits. But he looks splendid in them, said Trevor. I wouldn't paint him in a frock coat for anything. What you call rags, I call garments. What seems poverty to you is picturesque to me. However, I'll tell him of your offer. Alan, said Dewey seriously, you painters are heartless a lot. An artist's heart is his head, replied Trevor. And besides, our business is to realize the world as we see it, not to reform it as we know it. Asakyu Somichi, and now tell me how Laura is. The old model was quite interested in her. You don't mean to say you talked to him about her, said you. Certainly I did. He knows all about the relentless colonel, the lovely Laura, and the 10,000 pounds. You told that old beggar all my private affairs? Cried Yui, looking very red and angry. My dear boy, said Trevor, smiling. That old beggar, as you call him, is one of the richest men in the Europe. He could buy all London tomorrow without overdrawing his account. He has a house in every capital, dines off gold plate, and can prevent Russia going to war when he chooses. What on earth do you mean? exclaimed Yui. What I say, said Trevor. The old man you saw today in the studio was Baron Husband. He is a great friend of mine, buys all my picture and that sort of thing, and gave me a commission a month ago to paint him as a beggar. Kubulevo la Fantasi the Millionaire, and I must admit, he made a magnificent figure in his rugs, or perhaps I should say in my rugs. They are an old suit I got in Spain. Baron Habsburg, cried Yui. Good heavens! I gave him a sovereign, and he sank into an armchair, the picture of dismay. Gave him a sovereign? Shouted Trevor, and he burst into a roar of laughter. My dear boy, you'll never see it again. Son, affair, silahon, decide. I think you might have told me, Alan, said Yui sulkily, and not have let me make such a fool of myself. Well, to begin with, Yui, said Trevor, it never entered my mind that you went about distributing alms in that reckless way. I can understand you kissing your pretty model, but you're giving a sovereign to an ugly one, by Jove, no! Besides the fact that I really was not at home today to anyone, and when you came in, I didn't know whether Hosprick would like his name mentioned. You know he wasn't in full dress. What a duffer he must think of me, said Yui. Not at all. He was in the highest spirits after you left. Kept chuckling to himself and rubbing his old wrinkled hands together. I couldn't make it out why. He was so interested to know all about you. But I see it all now. He'll invest your sovereign for you. He pay you the interest every 6 months and have a capital story to tell after dinner. I am unlucky devil, growled Yui. The best thing I could do is to go to bed. And, my dear Alan, you mustn't tell anyone. I shouldn't dare show my face in the row. Nonsense. It reflects the highest credit on your philanthropic spirit. Yui, and don't run away. Have another cigarette, and you can talk about Laura as much as you like. However, Yui wouldn't stop, but walked home, feeling very unhappy, and leaving Alan Trevor in fits of laughter. The next morning, as he was at breakfast, the servant brought him up a card on which was written, Monsieur Goftab, Nado la Padios Masifor la Bahosper. I suppose he has come for an apology, said Yui to himself, and he told the servant to show the visitor up. An old gentleman with gold spectacles and grey hair came into the room and said, in a slight French accent, Have I honor of addressing Monsieur Erskine? Yui bowed. I have come from Baron Hasburg, he continued. The Baron? I beg, sir, that you will offer him my sincerest apology, stammered Yui. The Baron, said the old gentleman with a smile, has commissioned me to bring you this letter and he extended the sealed envelope. On the outside was written, a wedding present to Yui Erskine and Lara Merton from an old beggar, and inside was a check for £10,000. When they were married, Alan Trevor was the best man and Baron made a speech at wedding breakfast. Millionaire models, remarked Alan, are rare enough, but, by Jove, model millionaires are a rarest still.